Okay, so welcome to today's webinar. Our topic is what's new for 2018-19 for this school year with your USATestprep account. I'm going to go through this presentation first, and then I'll log in on the live site to demo a few of the things that I'm going to go over. So first of all, here's our agenda for what we're going to talk about. First, we had some name changes on the site. We'll talk about those, as well as all the recent updates since last spring, as well as future plans on USATestprep, and then I'll log into the site. We'll have some Q&A time, but again, feel free to type in your question as you think of them. And then again, there's that survey when you exit. All right, so the first topic are name changes. Over the summer, we had a pretty big name change on our site. So if you've used USATestprep last school year, you'll know that one of your main tabs was benchmarks, which is really our biggest, most popular feature on the site, where you can create custom assessments. And we found that teachers were really using the benchmarks tab for all kinds of assessments. So not just formal benchmarks, but maybe a 5-question quiz for your class for that week. So it really has a more broad use. So we wanted to rename it to assessments because this is, again, your assessment builder. You can make a baseline assessment. Again, you could use it as formal benchmarking. It could be very informal. You could even create an assessment with questions of your own and then use it as a lesson and go through it in projector mode. So there's lots of different ways you can use it. If you're not familiar with what an assessment is on our site, and again, this is previously called benchmark, the reason that assessments are very special is because of this list here. First of all, they allow you to choose specific standards. So if you only want to assess students over, 5 standards that you're teaching for that week or for that unit, you can choose those exact ones. And when you create an assessment, you also have the option to look at our item bank, and you can pick out the exact questions that you like. And if you need to find questions at a certain DOK or difficulty level, there's different sorting capabilities when you're going through the questions. You can also input questions of your own. So if you have questions that you really like that we don't have in our system, then you can easily add in questions of your own. You can also incorporate other item types. We have short answer questions, performance task, and free response available. And with an assessment, the same items are given to all students. And so because of that, you'll get a lot of great data with an assessment that you will not get with other types of activities. For example, you'll have an item analysis for every single question, and you can view your students' mastery by standard using our dot rank system, and you can even assign remediation directly from that page in just a couple of clicks. So if you haven't already used our assessment system or benchmarks from last year, definitely check it out. Again, that's just kind of an overview of what they are. And then assessments are also really popular because they can be shared in your building. So if you need to have an assessment that your entire department is using, it's very easy. When you create an assessment, in the very first step, there's the option to choose shared assessment. And that's all you have to do on your end if you're creating it. And then in order for another teacher in your building to see it, they would have to have at least one class created on USATestprep associated with that subject area. So in my screenshot here, I have a US history and geography assessment. So in order for another teacher to see it, they have to have a class created on USATestprep with US history and geography associated, and then they'll be able to see it. And that's something that you can always change in your class management area for each of your classes to double check which subject areas you have set up with your class. Okay, then we also renamed test on our site. We had an assignment category called test. We renamed those to USA Test Prep generated test because we didn't want to have confusion between an assessment and a test. So we tried to clarify these a little bit. These are randomly generated practice tests, and they cover all the different domains or strands of your subject area, or you can pick one domain of your choice. But the key difference here is that students will have different questions because it is randomly generated from the second the student clicks to start that test. A random practice test will load. And so because of that, there's no item analysis because, again, the questions are going to vary. There's no answer key or printing ability due to that. The flip side is that you don't have to create those tests because they are generated for you. But if you are looking for more data or the answer key or the ability to print, then you would definitely want to build an assessment and then assign that instead. But the key here is that no functionality changed when we renamed benchmarks to assessments or tests to USA Test Prep generated test. Nothing changed with how they work. It's just strictly the name. All right, so now let's talk about what did change. Here's a list of the recent updates from last spring as well as over the summer, and we'll look at more detail at these. Over here on the left, for the spring, we added Lexile Levels and an item analysis export. So we'll talk about those. And then this past summer, the highlights were we changed our avatar system. We added two-part items within your assessments. We also added the option for teachers to see who has an assessment currently saved. So again, we'll go over these in more detail. We changed the group assignment limit. We added something called a default user, and we removed Quiz Builder. All right, so we'll start at the top. So Lexile Levels, here's a screenshot. When you're building an assessment, if you teach ELA or reading, some test that involves passages, if you're building a custom assessment, you will see the Lexile level listed for passages. And we added Lexile Levels primarily for elementary and middle school, but majority of high school level passages will have a Lexile level as well. So you can sort passages by Lexile level. So if you're looking for something within a certain range, we now have that displayed right there when you're building an assessment. Okay, then if you're looking at the results for an assessment and you're looking at your item analysis, we now have an export because there was no easy way before. If you needed to get all that information, you'd have to just print that entire page out. So this makes it a lot easier. You can just export and get all the questions, the classification for what standard they were, the percent correct, all of that will be there. Plus, you have another sheet called Student Answers, which will show how every student answered every question. So that is not something that you can easily find anywhere else other than that export. So if that's something that you've been needing to find, we now have that. Okay, next, still talking about assessments. We now have the ability for you to see which students have an assessment currently saved. The reason we added this is because you might give an assessment to your class and you know that little Johnny was working on his assessment, but then when you go to your results, you don't see anything there for him. And so usually the case is that the student didn't finish, they have it saved, but previously you would have to have had logged into that student's account to see that. So we made it a lot easier. You can see it on your screen. So again, you can see who has an assessment saved. You'll have a pink notification on your result page that there is X number of assessments saved to complete later, and you have a link where you can click to view the list of students, and that will show you exactly when they saved that assessment, the date and the time. The time is Eastern. It will show you when it's going to expire, because when students save to complete their test later, they have 1 month until that progress is deleted. So it will show you how long it has to go and the student name. So hopefully that will be helpful so you don't have to log into different students' accounts to figure out where their assessment is. You can see that on your results screen. Okay, next we added the ability to incorporate two-part items into an assessment. So this is very new. So if you're building an assessment, there's now an additional tab between performance task and free response called two-part items. And these are two questions that go with the same passage or the same image or graph. The example here illustrates. And these items can only be found when you're building an assessment. So students will never run across these in practice. They're strictly for you to use within an assessment. And because these are so new on our site, we're still very busy adding these. So our content team is uploading these, every day. So you may not see them right away for a particular standard in your subject area, but just check back, within over the next few weeks, and you'll see a lot more added. Okay, also this pertains mostly to those of you who have an admin account on USATestprep. If you're looking at your Teachers tab, you'll see something called a default user for your school. So just want to quickly explain what that is and why it was added. If you have a teacher who is deleted, maybe they left your building, but they had created a bunch of shared assessments that other teachers still need access to. We don't want those assessments or questions that were authored to be lost. And so this is where everything gets dumped if teachers are deleted, but they had a shared assessment. It will be stored in that default account. That way other teachers still have access to it. And then a few other kind of smaller changes highlighted here. First is our new avatar system. Our avatars no longer require Flash, so Flash is no longer used on our site. We have a bunch of new designs, and this is also something else that students can use their tokens with. So if they're not interested in playing a game, they can buy avatars and collect them. And there are some free options. So if a student doesn't have tokens, they can still have a couple choices. As a teacher, you can pick any that you want. The tokens don't apply to you. Another change here is when you're building a group assignment, we previously had a cap of 100 activities within that group assignment, but we found that was still too many because it makes it just kind of out of control on the student homepage if they click to load that group assignment and there's up to 100 items in there. So the new limit is now 50 activities per group assignment. If you need more than 50, then you'll just need to create another group assignment. And so hopefully that will help to make smaller, more manageable chunks of work for students to go through. And then on your resources page for your subject area, we took away the quiz builder. You'll still see the icon there for right now, but if you click on it, you'll get a message to let you know that it's been retired because really this was a duplicate feature of our assessment system. So if you need an assessment for printing, you can go to the assessments tab and just create it there. And quiz builder, it only saved your most 5 recent quizzes, unlike assessments where you can create as many as you need to. So if you needed to create, a version A and a version B, it's really easy and you can name them and it will keep better track of them. But in the past, we didn't allow assessments to be printed, which is why we had Quiz Builder, but there's no longer a need for it. All right, then for future plans on the site, this is what you can expect at some point this school year. First is that we plan to have full sharing capabilities for shared teachers. So if you are a secondary teacher on a class, you know that right now you can't create assignments for the class, only the primary teacher can. But we really want to go for more a co-teaching model where both the primary and the secondary teacher are kind of both equals in that you can both create assignments for the class. So if the primary teacher is out and the secondary teacher needs to take over, it'll be really seamless. So that is something we're working on. We're also working on enhancing our assign individual and average weakness buttons. And this is something I'll show when I log into the site in just a few minutes. This is a really helpful feature. It's become a lot more popular where on your assessment result page, you can very easily push out remediation practice to your students. But right now you can't customize your settings. So that's something we want to add. And we also want to make it smarter because right now if you assign that practice out, it gets assigned to all students. And if you were to go back the next day because you have a student finish late and you were to assign that practice again, it's going to assign it to all students again. So right now it's not smart enough to eliminate the students who've already gotten the assignment. And then we also want to improve what those look like in your gradebook. And then another setting that we want to add for assessments is that you can disable the audio. We've gotten lots of requests for that, so that is something we plan to add. We did already add an option where you can disable the calculator. So if your specific test allows a calculator, you can decide on an assessment whether you want students to have that calculator or not. And then, of course, we're always adding content throughout the year. So that can be, questions, performance tasks, class activity worksheet. So all of that is ongoing. All right, so let me go ahead and log in to the site to show what a couple of these things look like. Okay, so here I'm logged in to a sample teacher account. One of the nice things about USA Test Prep is that regardless of what state you're in or what level you teach, everything is going to look the same. So even though I'm showing middle school here, if you're a high school teacher and you teach AP biology or you teach third grade math in elementary school, everything is the same layout. So here I'm logged in and I want to go into my assessments tab and click on the results for this assessment. Okay, and right here, I see this message that there is one assessment saved to complete later. So this is the new feature, where again, you can see that list, the list of students, when they saved it, when it's going to expire, and the student name. So again, hopefully that will help, any confusion about, where did Cindy's assessment go? I don't see her listed in my results. You can see that she really just has it saved. And again, here's the individual students. So if you didn't see someone in this list, it could be because they have it saved. And this only applies to students who actually click to save it. If a student is in the middle of a test and they lose their internet connection, when they log back in, they will have like a backup version saved. Those are not going to show here. Not our backup save. This is only if the student actually chose to save it and complete later. All right, then something else. I'm here within the student.rank, just to give you some context for what I was talking about earlier with these two buttons. This is where you can see your student scores by standard for an assessment. And at the bottom are these two buttons to assign weakness practice based on how your students did. So this first one to assign individual weakness will push out practice to all students in their 3 lowest scoring standards. And all you have to do is just click to confirm. And that's going to refresh the page. And it will let you know that all of those assignments were created. Let's Give it a second to refresh. And so there's my message at the top. And then the same is true for the average weakness, where it assigns everyone practice with those. But one of the enhancements that we're planning on is to add some settings, because right now, for example, you can't choose whether you want to allow students to have a minimum score or maybe watch a video lesson beforehand. It just kind of assigns out practice questions with the ability to retry missed questions, which is great. But you might have students who maybe scored, a 90, and you feel like they don't need that practice. Just being able to have smarter controls, maybe to exempt students, not assigning it to the same students who've already gotten it. So all of those things are in the works, just because these are two very popular buttons to use. All right, let me go and build an assessment to point out a couple of the new features there. Okay, so within my Assessments tab, I'm going to click on the link to create new assessment. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and choose my subject area, and I'm going to choose English or reading, because I wanted to show when you're in custom mode and you're picking out the questions. And you have the passages listed. Here's the Lexile level. Again, you can sort the passages in lots of different ways, and Lexile level is one of them. And so that will just reorganize so that the highest Lexile is at the top, and you can always resort that. So that way, again, that can serve as a guide if you're looking for a passage within a certain Lexile range. Then I also want to go and show the two-part items that we have. So let me continue to that step. I say yes, I want to add two-part items. And you'll just choose your standard like every other tab. You can pick out your standard. You might see this message that they're in production, because again, our content team is very busy adding the two-part items. So it might not be until a couple weeks that you see them added there, but that's where you'll go, and the process to pick them out is exactly the same like with the questions. All right, so let me go back home. And let me just make sure that that's all the information to share before I start opening up for questions. Okay, so I think we hit all of the high points with Lexile levels, the saved assessments. The only other thing would be within your assessment result page. I wanted to quickly show where to find the item analysis. So let me go back into my results here. Okay, and then you have your item analysis tab, which is great because it gives you a breakdown by question for how your students answered everything. Again, when you click view, you can have the breakdown by answer. So rather than having to expand all of these and look through each one, you can quickly export it all to Excel, and it will also show you exactly which students answered A, B, C, and D. Because with this view, you can see which students got it correct, and you can see which students got it incorrect, but you can't see who answered A, B, and D as the incorrect answer. So all of that is now available in this Excel export. And again, this is just for an assessment, because all students have the same set of questions, and so you get a lot of great data afterwards. So I think that's all the information to kind of quickly highlight on the live site, but I'm going to stick around for several minutes and see what questions come through. I really do appreciate everyone's time this morning. Hopefully this was helpful, and again, leave us some quick feedback about what webinar topics you'd like to see offered for this school year, and have a great rest of your day. And I will send out the email with the recording a little bit later on. Okay, and I do see a question, so I'm going to go ahead and start answering some questions now. The first question is, do the Lexile levels show up in all programs or all tests? They will only show up in tests that are passage-based, which is typically going to be the ELA and the reading test. So if you're building a history assessment, then you're not going to see that Lexile level. Because the Lexile levels are shown in a few different places. And let me build a history one. I'm not sure if I'm going to look out and find one that has a passage here, but we'll quickly check. Okay, so if I'm in custom, if I happen to run across a question that had a passage, but again, I don't know if I'm going to, when you click to view that passage, I think I don't know that I'm going to have one. It only is going to show it to you if you're in that view by passage mode. So let me switch this to ELA. So if I click to view the passage, it just gives me a preview. So really the only time that we even show Lexile level is this view right here when you're actually picking out the question, if it's attached to a passage. Okay, there's a question about, is there a webinar that introduces USA Test Prep for new teachers? The answer is yes. If you go to your homepage, there's a webinars link over on the right-hand side in this little blue box. And this will take you to a series of pre-recorded webinars that we have. The first one is Intro to USA Test Prep, which is all about getting your account set up, setting up classes, and different resources. Then we have a whole webinar devoted to building assessments and different assignments. And we have one about progress monitoring and looking at the data. So those are great because you can pause, you can skip around to find what you need. And they also have chapters. So if it looks like, there's no way I have time to go through that long of a recording, you can skip around to the chapters that you're interested in. So that's a good starting point. Also within this downloads area, we have some quick start guides. So if you're brand new, to our site and not really sure where to get started, the quick start guide is a good resource, and it's a 2-page. It's taking a while to load here. So it's 2 pages, and it has an overview of the homepage, kind of where to get started, some information about building assessments, and then different resources that you have, and some, practical ideas that you can start implementing. So those are a good resource. And then we also have a Google Slides presentation. And this is actually useful if you need to go back and train your staff about USA Test Prep. If you have a bunch of new teachers, you can make a copy and then you can make all kind of changes to it. But this is our template, and it will go through a lot of the main features of the site. So again, all of that is available within that help section. We have the pre-recorded webinars and those downloads too. Okay, so here's a great question about saving assessments. The question is, can students have 2 assessments going in different subjects at the same time? The answer is they could get around it and have 2 assessments open in 2 different browsers or 2 different tabs. However, students will have corrupt sessions and assessments because of that. Because we do give them a little warning when they start a test, but they already have another one open. So they are going to cause themselves problems if they do that. So it's always best if a student will, finish or save an assessment before they start another one. But they can have multiple tests saved at one time. So if they started a math test one day and they have to save it, and then they start English the next day and they save it, that's perfectly fine. They can have multiple saved tests, but they should only be actively working and only have one open at one time. Okay, I'm just going to hang around it for a couple more minutes to see if any other questions come through. Okay, there's a couple questions about students taking tests, so let me log into a student account here. And so from your class management page, you can quickly log in as any of your students. So let me go ahead and click Begin for this assessment. And I'll show you exactly where students can save a test or assessment. And those are currently the only two things on the site that can be saved. If students are in the middle of practice and they lose internet, unfortunately that progress is not saved, but any kind of test or assessment is. Okay, so here I'm in to this assessment, and over on the left, students have their timer and they also have a highlighter. So there's a question about, can students annotate on a passage? They can't annotate and make notes, however, they can highlight. So if they had a passage, you know, they can highlight anything. They can even highlight parts of questions if they're trying to, you know, look at keywords there. They can also eliminate answer choices. So there's a bunch here that students can, you know, do for any test or assessment. And then at the bottom, there's a little link, save for me to complete later. And this is where the student would confirm that they want to save it, and they'll have confirmation that it's been saved. And if they go back to their home page, then in this complete a save test area, there's a little one to let me know that I do have a test saved. And if I click on it, that will give me the information about it, you know, how many days it's remaining. And again, it's saved for 1 month. Okay, there's a few more questions. Let me make sure I get to them. There's a question about, is there a read aloud option in Spanish? So when I was in that test, you may have noticed a little speaker icon. Our questions and passages and answer choices do have audio. The audio is only in English. The Spanish translation only applies to the actual visual text on the page. It does not translate the audio into Spanish. So audio is English only. Okay, there's a few other questions. Let me make sure I get to them all. Okay, there's a question about sharing classes and sharing assessments. So if you have two teachers and you're both a primary teacher and you each have your own classes, then yes, you can share assessments. Let me go back to my account here. So if I create an assessment and I share it, it will have a little pink S, and that opens it up for anyone else in my building and my department to log into their account, and they're going to see this assessment. And if you log into your account and you see a bunch of assessments and you think, wait a minute, where did all these come from? You can click on it and you can see exactly who created that assessment, so you can see who's out there sharing them, and then you can assign it to your students. Okay, and there's also a question about the student.rank tab again. So let me go back to my results for an assessment. And one of the tabs is called student.rank because on several different places on the site, we use kind of a proficiency color-coded system called .rank. So in your assessment, if you go to student.rank, it shows all of your students, every standard that was assessed on here, and you have this color-coded guide. There's a little key in the top right where it says instructions, and that will show you what the pink, orange, and green dots represent. And then again, you'll see that in different places. Students can also see their own dot rank progress. We use the dot rank in the teacher progress report, and then here on the assessment result page as well. Okay, so those are all the questions I see at this time, but if you think of any questions afterwards, feel free to reply back to the email that I'm going to send out later today and let me know your question, and I'll be happy to help or send you to the right person in our office who can help you. But thanks so much for joining. Again, I really appreciate everyone's time this morning. Hopefully, all of the updates will help make USA Test Prep more user-friendly and beneficial for you this school year. But we're very open to feedback. A lot of us here are former teachers, so we are here to make your job easier, and we've been on your side, so we completely get it. There's a feedback button at the bottom of every page that you're on. So if you think of something that would be really helpful or an idea, let us know, and we read all of those that come in. So that's a good place to just drop us some feedback. So again, thanks so much, and be on the lookout in your email later this morning for the email with the recording and the PDF attachment, and have a great rest of your day.